Good morning, guys. Welcome to a Q&A kind of live. Specifically, wanted to do a Q&A asking y'all, what questions do you have about starting a technical consulting company? Whether it be data, whether it be, any type of technical consulting company. There's a lot of similarities, I'd say. You run into the same problems, especially when you first start out. I actually just filmed a video that was titled something. I actually don't know what the title will be just yet, but the theme is like, should you start consulting or why you shouldn't start consulting? And one of the concepts being, if you can't land clients, it gets really hard, obviously, to even have a business. So that's generally the big thing. It's like regardless if the economics are good, like right now, like if it's a clear good economic boom because interest rates are low or whatever the reasoning might be. If you don't have a good way of getting clients, it doesn't really matter. And if there's an economic downturn, that's just going to make it worse. So feel free to ask questions because this really is meant to be more of a Q&A. So I'm very open to questions, especially around consulting. I'd love to kind of know what challenges, if you're considering it. I know a lot of people wonder, should I do it? Is it worth it? Generally, I'll tell most people, you don't have to commit, which is kind of nice. That's one of the nice trade-offs with consulting. The trade-off being that unlike, let's say, a business that you build that maybe is a product-based business where there is, you have to spend time, you have to commit to an idea for a long period of time, and it might not be a good idea. Consulting is nice because you can, as soon as someone needs your help, you can do the work. You can get paid for it, but you don't have a product, so there's no value beyond that work that you do. You can build up IP, and there's little things along the way that you can build, but it's a little less of a product business. People are maybe slowly funneling in. Let me see. Let me see if I can find some thoughts or some questions already. I'll wait for you guys to ask. Oh, I'll just share here. And if you are thinking, here, do you have any advice trialing here? Okay, let me put this up. Do you have any advice on essentially trialing consulting before quitting your full-time job? Yeah, so this is, what I did. I worked full-time actually for a little bit. And I think it's, before you take out or start any venture, I think it's worth working full-time at a company for a few years or longer, just so you can kind of understand how things operate. But generally, the advice I'd give is one, you don't have to, again, like announce to the world you're consulting. Honestly, these days, if you just put out content that is generally helpful, I've seen people who just put out content on a specific topic like Power BI or Snowflake or Databricks. And even if they're not a consultant, kind of get pulled into consulting. So you don't have to feel like, you have to like say, hey, I'm a consultant and feel like you put some risk on your job. You can just put out content and people will generally find you and you can talk to them about that. I would try to figure out like how your company feels about it. At every company I worked at, I did let them know that I was doing it. When I worked at Facebook, they had a process to deal with it as well. Because actually, I saw that when I was signing the contract for Facebook, that there was like a moonlighting clause. So I just need to make sure I'm like, hey, like, is it okay if I do consulting? And luckily, Facebook did have like a process for handling that kind of stuff. But yeah, so you can start putting out content, start kind of trying to find clients, in essentially not directly through that initially, and then you can slowly start building up some traction, and then eventually, once you have a certain amount of prospects, I'd say like once you're getting like 3 to 5 reach outs a month at least from possible prospects that you would want to work with, I would say it's probably a good time to consider maybe going off and going full time, right? But yeah, I wouldn't rush, right? Like you want to feel safe. I think it's important to feel safe, not to feel like you're just gonna burn the boats. You can obviously, like if you've got money or if you don't have a lot of responsibilities, feel free, you can burn the boats. But I'd say build up a little bit of a financial backing. Have some money, have 6 to 12 months put away, build up some clout or some just some ability to land clients, whether that's again marketing, sales, whatever technique you want to use to get in front of people and build trust. And then from there, you can kind of go forward. Let's see. This is more of a data model question. I prefer answering some consulting questions right now. So if you have like consulting questions, that's really what I like to focus on. I do have like some data modeling videos. It's probably not going to be as specific as what you're looking for. Once you start getting specific, then you have to start getting deep into the details, right? So and I actually don't know what let's see, CMDB. I'm gonna guess CM is some sort of, yeah. All right, here. Okay. How do you find clients? Are there any platforms where companies are looking for consultants? Um, Obviously, okay, there's two. How do you find clients? Um, in terms of platforms, right? There are people who make certain platforms work, like Upwork, but it's always going to be hard because you're pricing against everyone else. If you have a unique skill or something that like is very valuable, it can work. But it's kind of a space where, because it is arguably easier because there's tons of clients, you trade off the fact that you're going to look as like there's just going to be more people you're competing against. On the other side, the way I get clients is mostly through content, right? And there's a whole list of ways, but I'm going to start like with me. I use content, right? Whether it's my YouTube. In fact, the last, I think, 5 or 6 calls I've had with people have been like, oh yeah, YouTube, YouTube, YouTube. So that's been a big space. But there's a bunch of people who use, the written word. I that's where I started, and honestly, that's where a lot of my clients initially came from. Was just I put out tons and tons of content over the last few years. LinkedIn, I think, has become a really good space as well. And this is all on the content side. But that's only one facet, right? There are people who are really good at what I like consider the other spaces, like networking. So, and when I say networking, I mean you're either really good at going to events and meeting like 50 people and connecting with them and following up with them, because most people go to events and I think don't have a really good plan, including myself. I'll just go to an event and I'll hang out with my friends, all the people I know in the data space. And you really, if you're trying to get clients from an event, one, I'd usually say, from a networking event, don't go to a data event. Find some events that are adjacent to data events and try to network there and see what problems they have there. And then also, once you start building a network, really try to actually, keep it alive, which means like add value to it, constantly give to it. And then there's sales. So this is like people who are really good at maybe using Sales Navigator on LinkedIn, or understanding kind of how to send people the right message at the right time. Because sales is not just sending one cold DM and then hoping it works, right? Like most salespeople probably send like 10 cold DMs to the same person, of varying kind of approaches. Like I have a whole video actually on this topic. Where is this video actually? How to sell. I'm gonna actually where's okay here. I'm gonna share my screen here. I actually have a ton of content about this. Share screen. Yes, share screen. So I have a community that I put, which is free, by the way. And this whole section is free. Like I have 2 sections. One is free, which is all of this stuff, which is honestly where most of the content is, and then a paid section. But really, the free section has a ton of content. One of them being like if you want to learn kind of more about sales or like how to use LinkedIn Sales Navigator. I think it's like a 40-minute video where I'm going through with Jocelyn Nanette, who's a sales account executive who's worked at everywhere from ThoughtSpot to AWS, and now I think she just got Hakoda as account executive selling data services. So you can learn a ton there. So anyone who's like, hey, I want to know how to land clients, you can honestly go here, and I'll just put this. And it should be free. I don't even think you have to sign in for the free spaces, so you can just kind of go here. So that should answer that. Okay. I'm having trouble to find pricing for projects. How to determine it for, let's say, a Snowflake implementation? That's a good question. Like I like pricing. It will depend a little bit on what you're delivering on pricing. Because a Snowflake implementation, usually I would attach a dashboard component to it just because I want to add some value that people see at the other side, right? Like I don't want them just to be like, hey, okay, I built you these tables, and then I'm done, right? And then they don't really see the value of your project. So I really add dashboards, and honestly, I've seen some pretty crazy prices. I think I saw once like 10 Looker dashboards for $300,000, which you assume all the stuff behind the Looker dashboard. It's not just the Looker dashboard; it's the tables, it's the data pipelines, it's the extract, it's the load, etc. But honestly, Snowflake implementation could be anywhere from 50K on, and maybe cheaper if it's really simple. But like you could probably go anywhere from 50K to 100K pretty easily, depending where you live, and there's other metrics in there. But yeah, could definitely dive into kind of the whys and the whats. There's more details, right? Because like Snowflake implementation, there's a lot of stuff that could go into that could make it more or less. Let's see. Okay, how do you find clients? Answer that one kind of. Uh, let's see. I'm trying to figure out what this question. What options are there to access to clients' data when designing a data pipeline or dashboard for them? I'm curious if what this question is asking is like, can you access a client's data or dashboard or data for building a dashboard? And in general, right? Like if I'm signing up with a client, I'm going to get an account with that client to build anything if I need to build things, because that's generally the thing is like I need access to it to actually work on it. I have seen some people where like they just get CSVs over and it gets really messy, and someone's like, "Oh, I'll just hand you new CSVs and you can use that." I prefer, you should probably like get an account on the on with your client, then just have access to the data. Um, and then generally you have to make sure PII and stuff is handled correctly. But other than that, you should hopefully have access to that data. Um, I'm gonna just go. Let's see. How many years of experience do I need as an analyst to start a company? This is something I do like answering, because you can kind of start consulting, quote unquote, at any time. Um, it's just the value you can add is different. When I first started consulting, the very first project I did that I always lean back on is I helped migrate an Access database to SQL Server, an on-prem SQL Server, and that was the project, right? It wasn't something exciting. It wasn't some crazy implementation. I was working with another consultant who's over me, and so I was more of just subcontracting. And so really, you could go probably find some mom and pop shops maybe in your area that need some basic Excel help, which you probably can't charge a ton for, but maybe they just want to answer a few questions, and you can answer those. So you can start getting experience pretty early. Being fully committed and like quitting your job and finding like, becoming a full-time consultant or something similar. I'd recommend having, a good 5 or 7 years just for safety, just for like getting experience, might as well learn on someone else's dollar, so to speak. Obviously, you're going to be working and doing a good job, but at the same time, you're like learning, how does a business run? What do people care about? You don't want to learn all of that while you don't have money and you don't have like some experience. So yeah, I mean, I'd at least hopefully have at least 5 years of experience, and then more is not necessarily, or more is good. How did you get your first client? Um, So this is always funny to me, because the first client I got made me think it was going to be easy to get clients. And I talk about this again. I think I actually have a whole video, but I'll do it here as well. I want to see if I take this off. I want to say I have this possibly at the bottom of my resources. Oh, well, there's a few of these. I'm just curious if I have it here. Okay, yeah, an intro. My first client. Yeah. So the first client I got, again, made me think that I was like always going to get clients and it was going to always be easy. I had someone reach out to me and they were like, "Hey, I'd worked with them at a hospital, and they're like, 'Hey, I need some help doing this implementation.' Again, it was like an Access DB to SQL Server migration, and I basically subcontracted under them. And that first year, I made about the same that I was making at my full time job, which was about like 60K, which obviously is amazing, right? Like that year, I was like, "Oh man, I made 120K. Like I'm doing great." Like I don't know, 23, which depending on where you worked, there were obviously still the big tech salaries that you could be making about the same for your first year out. So I was doing that. I was like, "Oh, this is awesome." Then the next year came, and I think I maybe made like 5K. consulting, and I realized, oh my gosh, I got this first client, but I never actually thought about how to get a second client. So that's when I realized I had to put out a ton of content. And like I read, I don't have it next to me anymore, but I usually have it somewhere. It's like the millionaires, or no, what is it? $1 Million Consulting Agency. One of Alan Weiss's books. He's got a few. I don't remember which one it was specifically. And it just talked about content, and I was like, oh, okay, I can do content. I'd been writing kind of for myself a cheesy like food blog, and I was like, oh, I've gotten people to go to this food blog. I think I can get people to go to a tech blog. And so I started writing a blog and writing on Medium and writing in a few places, and then I started getting more traction. So that's what eventually landed me my real first client. But yeah, the first client almost made me think it was going to be easy forever. So it was not. Um, this is more of a tech question. Let's see. Do you have any recommendations on how to learn to write a response for a request for a proposal? I actually have not had to fill out an RFP, mostly because I've always heard that with RFPs, if you get an RFP, they've already decided who they want to do the work. You're just kind of part of the process. I should have someone. So I do also, again, on this community, I do like some free lives. Here you can actually see when I had one with Joe Reese. And that would be actually a good idea to do. I should find someone that's really good with RFPs, because I'm sure I have someone in this community that's good with RFPs. So yeah, I'll have to do that. I actually I've never done an RFP because I've always heard they're a good way to waste a lot of time. um, what is the minimum contract size you'll be willing to take? I mean, before it was almost anything, right? And I think that was one of the learnings that I had early, or not early. It took a long time to get there. Where, I was working at Facebook, and I was like, man, I can never quit, right? I'm working at Facebook. At the time, I think I was making like 300K a year, and I was like, I can't make that much consulting. Like, I'm never going to find that much work. And really, one of the big things that changed it was having a minimum size contract. Because suddenly, instead of oftentimes I would work with people and kind of just let them, do hourly rates, and then sometimes you spend so much time just trying to get them to get the work that they want to do moving forward, that you wouldn't really be doing like a 1 month project would take 6 months, not because you were doing any work, but because the other person just wasn't spending time on it or responding to you fast enough. So I switched to contract size, like minimums, and now my goal is generally not to do anything less than 10K. Like, and 10K is usually like what people might call like a land and expand project. Like, hey, I'll do an analysis, or I'll do a scoping, or I'll do something that like gets me understanding what's going on, and then I can give you some advice on what to do with it. That way, you see how I work, you see what I'm going to deliver, and you don't invest, $50,000. You can do 10,000, and then from there, if you're happy with that work, we can talk about a bigger project. So generally, that's the case. Yeah, that's what I'll usually keep it around. How do you deal with the legal aspects? I assume technical consulting, there's a portion seeing and using the customer's data. Yes, you obviously have to interact with customer data. You should get a lawyer to look through contracts, and you should have insurance. Usually, for example, like with insurance, it's interesting. I had recently a client who I want to say the standard, and maybe this has changed, but like when I started, and so far this has been okay. Generally, is to have I don't know what's the exact like terminology, and like which type of insurance it is, but it's like to have like $1 million worth of coverage. Per incident. So I don't remember if that's like just like more of a general insurance, but it's like basically if a data breach, or if you do something that hurts a client, right, that you have at least $1 million per incident to cover it. And so most insurance companies will have that. And then I just was looking through, or this was early last year. I was looking through a contract where they wanted me to have $2 million of coverage, and I was able to kind of bring that back down to 1 million, because I was like, I don't want to go pay a bunch more for insurance, and it doesn't make sense for what I'm doing anyways. I'm not going to be directly touching customer data in that case. But yeah, there's a ton of like things that you should consider. Insurance being one of them. Do get a lawyer once you start, especially once you go from maybe doing like $1,000 here, $1,000 there, doing some Upwork work, and doing like your $50,000 projects, right? Because that's where things can start to bite you. Okay, so this is DE. Let's see. Apart from networking, which should here. Apart from networking, which area should one invest in to get clients for AI and data consulting? Yeah, I mean, besides networking, I'm big on content, right? Because obviously that's what's worked for me. That's me though. It's also worked for a lot of other people actually, just because I'm actually again we have like some wins that we like to share here, where people like to share their wins. And so here's someone who gave an example of this, where they were talking about how they've been putting out more content, and that's kind of been leading to stuff as well. So you can actually look up their company. Was it W something WD Analytics or something? And so they've gotten better connected with Databricks. That's one thing that's helped them, but also they've been putting out a lot of content towards Databricks. Honestly, you never know. Actually, I think Jeff had something similar. So Jeff just posted, and he talked about how I happened to connect him with a podcast, as we were working together on some stuff, and that helped him bring the client. So honestly, content. The goal is, the way I really look at it, is you need to get in front of people, and they need to trust you. And that's kind of the two things. It's like, how are you going to get in front of people? How are they going to trust you? So that can be content, that can be sales, right? You're good at cold DMs. Cold DMs are hard. I actually wrote a message in this group that's like, cold DMs don't work, mostly because most people that do cold DMs, I think, are very selfish. And when they write it, they write it for themselves. They don't write it thinking about the person they're writing it for. But yeah, that's kind of some of the advice I'd say in terms of landing clients. Let's see. How do you determine the pricing for your first gig? I think this is a good question, because everyone tells you, hey, if you read any book, if you look up any blog posts on pricing for consulting, they'll all tell you, my minimum is 200 hours. The data doctor's here. Speaking of Jeff, we showed you. Sorry if you didn't want to be showed. But hopefully they join the TFA, so then they'll see it anyways. So generally, the first project, I'd say it's totally fine to do hourly, right? People, I like thinking about this like skiing, right? People will tell you, obviously, that the right way to ski is to do like parallel skis. So you can do turns real well, and you can do all that. But when you first start skiing, they teach you pizza and French fry, right? Like, if you got to slow down, you got to push in, and then otherwise you French fry. And that's kind of the same thing here with pricing, right? Value-based pricing is great. It's the way you can make more money, but it's also the way you can really screw yourself over on a project, because you don't understand, all the things that can go wrong in a project. So I'd say hourly-based pricing, figure out a good rate, which generally for me, if you're just starting out, it's safe to like double your current income and just call that a good hourly rate. And the next project you can be more specific and so on. The way I usually view it is like, there's kind of a list of priorities, which one is, figure out what you're going to consult in. Two is, how are you going to get clients? How are you going to get in front of them? Three is, figure out what's valuable. Like, what do your clients care about? What really pushes the needle? Figure out those problems, and really start focusing on those. And then four, you can focus on pricing, right? Like, pricing is important, but until you're good at the other three, it's really hard to like be strategic on pricing. Also, the data doctor, here's his minimum, 200 hours, which I think is fair. So 200 hours, if you're doing at least, $200 an hour, it's like $4,000 to $5,000. So I think that's fair. If you were to start all over again, would you start with written content or different medium that you would focus on? I think um, I would maybe start with video, but video is hard. I think that's the one thing. It's like, video is hard. YouTube is really hard. Whereas articles, like, one good article hits, and so I think I'd stick with written, because like I think I was just lucky with my video content. Like, I see a lot of people who put out, I'd say, more like well edited data content than me, but I think because I've had more time in the space, people already knew kind of who I was. When I came to YouTube, I had some name recognition, and so I think that kind of helped drive things. And so it's really hard if you don't have some way to get noticed on YouTube. So that's my thoughts. I think writing's still great. I still see people, like, there's still so many gaps in articles and content that I think people assume that everyone's written everything. Um, but there's so many gaps in terms of like what you could be writing on and topics you could be writing on that people will look up and need consulting help on. So do you try to cover everything in data? There are so many tools, or do you specialize in specific tools and areas? Yeah, no, I definitely don't try to cover everything. Like I'll occasionally obviously get pulled into things, right? Like sometimes it's like, well, I got to do some migration on a tool maybe that I've never used, just to get it to a tool that I have used. So that happens. Uh, Generally, I stick with I'd say the kind of Airflow, Snowflake, Databricks, SQL Server, SSAS, Azure Data Factory kind of space. um, I've used some, glue. I've used some, like, I think it's impossible not to try like accidentally use all these tools. Um, but yeah, I think that's generally the stuff that I see. And it's just the stuff that comes to me, partially because of the content that I write. I've written a lot on, or at least a little bit on Airflow and a little bit on Snowflake and some of that space. So I think that's why that tends to be the work that comes towards me. But yeah, I try not to do everything. It's hard not to like make it sound like you do everything, even when you don't do everything. It's like, oh, I could list like 20 tools, but there's like 1,000 out there. Yeah. So this is back to the insurance. Yeah, it's some sort of umbrella policy. Yeah, something like let me look this up. I'm trying to remember what is the business business. Oh, you know what? I put it on the handbook. I think handbook consulting handbook. This is just something else that I've written. And in this, do I have it? Oh yeah. So there's like general liability insurance, product liability, professional liability. Yeah. So I think it's like general and professional liability are the two that I have. Basically, if I cause some sort of issue because I you know accidentally left an S3 bucket open or something, right? Because that's happened a few times, not to me. Just I remember reading some articles like that where it's always a consultant. It's always like some contractor left an S3 bucket open, and it exposed all these people's data. So yeah, so it's usually professional liability and then just your general insurance. Do you ever work with clients from the public sector? If yes, what was your experience with that? If not, any particular reason why not? No, I haven't. I actually do know someone that does, but we haven't talked in a little bit. I not any particular reason, just like that's a specific focus, right? Like you have to like work to get those clients. You have to get RFPs. Generally, you have to be really good at RFPs in that case. Yeah, no specific reason. Just none of the clients came from there, really. Let's see. Do you accept POs and or credit cards for payments? What apps do you use billing clients and accepting payments? I assume POs you mean purchase orders. Yeah, usually purchase order. I mean, like most large organizations, like I always get a PO number whenever I do a large organization. That's always funny. When I do small ones, it's like never heard of a PO. Large organizations always have a PO. I do sometimes let credit card payments in. I probably shouldn't. I always like think it's like, it's not a big deal. It's 2%. And then at the end of the year, I'm like, I have given like $4,000 or something, whatever it is, something ridiculous to my credit card payments. Generally, I prefer ACH just to get it direct and not to lose anything. Usually I'll use bill.com. Bill.com is definitely one of my preferences. If not, I just have this tool that I've been using forever called ZipBooks, which is honestly just an old technology. It's not bad, but it's not great. It just happens to be the technology that I set up forever ago. But bill.com is my preference. Because also you often don't have to put in your bank account information like 30 times because it's just in bill.com and then people just kind of pay you and it's much simpler that way. So I don't have to give someone all my banking info every time. Yeah, so the data doctor is here. So that's when I brought up Jeff. That's Jeff. So if anyone has any questions for Jeff, he is here. So for people who don't remember, it was weeklies. I was talking about weeklies, and Jeff was sharing off his recent accomplishments. So it's cool. Okay, cool. Do you attend lots of external networking events to get yourself out there? I should do more. I definitely have been, I think, a little bit busy this year, but I have. I definitely do my fair share of like going out. At the end of the day, again, like the big thing with getting clients is you just need to get in front of them, and they need to know who you are, and they need to trust you. And so a great way to do that is just to meet them in person, right? Like that's like the optimal way. In fact, I think in the future with all of this like AI, everyone's like, oh, we'll just do like Gen AI SDRs, so like salespeople that will just aren't salespeople, they're just robots. I feel like relationships will become even more of a premium because it's like I don't want to talk to a robot. I want to talk to a person. I want to know who I'm talking to. I want to trust them. And so I think honestly, it'll become even more important to do these. And if I were to do something more, someone asked I think earlier if I would do something more on the content side. And would I change any things? One of the things I would do more is do more events, but do more events that are not necessarily technical, but are technical adjacent. So like a marketing ops or something kind of content or kind of events instead. Can you post a link to the resources you've shown? Yeah, so all of this, so these are again, and this stuff is free. So anything in this section here, this top section, the consulting resources, it's all free. I'll post it again in the chat, but yeah, it's already posted once. So you can go here. I think you can again sign up for free. I don't even, I don't even think you need to sign up. I think you can just go and watch some of the videos and the content. I don't, I think it's pretty easy to access. But feel free to access this. Yeah, and join in. Like I said, it's great to kind of chat with people and talk with people and learn from others. And that's really what I put together this community for. I was like, hey, I know I have problems doing consulting and have questions. And a lot of people answer it. And what I love is it's not just me answering questions. There'll be people who, let me see, I'll even open up, I think, pricing discussions because pricing is always, people are always interested in pricing. And there's plenty of chats that have been interesting, like upfront payment model, and some, there's a few comments here in terms of like how to handle that. And I think we all kind of pitched in some thoughts there, but yeah, so feel free to kind of jump in. All right. Let's see. More of a data entry question. Let's see. Okay, here. Often clients want upfront price to decide if they want your services. How to include a buffer time for those things that could go wrong, as well as client delays. This was actually an interesting question we had in this group because someone asked about specifically client delays, like how to handle that. And some people actually literally put in like they have monthly minimums. So it's like, hey, regardless of if you pay me or not, I'm gonna like get paid, right? Or if you ask me to do work or not, I'm gonna get paid. Which I think is fair, right? Because you often dedicate your time to a client, and I think it's fair to say like, hey, look, I'm cool with delays, that's fine, but you got to pay me, right? Because I'm still waiting on the bench. I have, this is my business, and you need to pay me. And it would be the same thing if they had employees, right? Like if I was an employee and you were delayed, you'd still have to pay me. So I think that's fair. I think it's fair to say that if a client delays. So in terms of like upfront price, what or how I usually view it. One, most clients want an upfront price, but when people do hourly, it's not an upfront price. It is our current estimate, and I've always seen hourly projects go over. I mean, not mine. I think I've been good at hitting mine, but everyone else, it just seems to be part of the business model where it's like if we quote you 100K, we mean 120 or 150, or honestly, I've seen 200K, off of that project. We won't tell you that, and you'll slowly have to just accept it, and that's what I've seen happen. So I try to do an upfront price, usually pricing per value. So one, I try to just include the fact that I know things are going to go wrong, right? I'm like, look, I'm not going to charge you amendments. I'm not going to charge you all this other stuff because I know things are going to go wrong, but I'm going to put that in the price here. So my price might be higher than, the hourly price you're getting, but the difference is that's the price. I do that because at this point, if I've delivered enough work, I'm kind of pretty comfortable in knowing what I'm going to deliver. In order to make sure you're secure in that, what I'd recommend is you include assumptions in your contract, which basically means I assume, like when I'm scoping out this project and I'm telling you this price, here are the assumptions that I have. I assume I will have access to a computer that has access to your data infrastructure. I assume, you'll be able to respond to me within a certain period of time. I assume, XYZ won't change. I assume this project only includes these 3 dashboards and no more. And just being very clear on what you will and won't do. because then as people, because otherwise people can just be like, oh, let's add this, let's add that. And then you can go back to the contract and be like, okay, that's fine. That is not part of the original contract. So in order to keep this in the certain current price range, we either have to remove, this part of the project, or we have to do a new contract for what you're asking. But yeah, there's a lot of like little nuance there. Oh, did I do the math wrong? Or maybe I did the math wrong. 200. Probably did the math wrong somewhere. Anyways, yeah, that makes more sense. I was trying to do that math. I was like, that was way off when I said that. Thanks. Where would you suggest writing on? Substack, Medium, or something else? I'd recommend one, having your own blog first, and then pointing everything else there. Medium is great for getting basically, it has market there, right? Like the market exists there in terms of like people eyeballs are great. The problem is with Medium, and this is, I've experienced this, is you can get 50,000 followers on Medium. And if you write an article that Medium's algorithm doesn't like, yeah, I don't know why I was so off here. Morning brain, still drinking coffee. Uh, yeah, I was like 4,000. That doesn't make sense at all. I missed a zero. Yeah, so yeah, Medium is great because there's a lot of people there. But again, if you post something that the algorithm doesn't like, it's not going to go well. Whereas, you're something like Substack, as you start building an audience, it's great. So I think initially, one, have your own blog, learn how to get SEO and get traction. But also, yeah, like post on Medium, try to redirect your blog, get people to notice it that way. It's kind of what I do. And then eventually I'd say build out a Substack. But you can really just focus on one at a time. You don't have to go all of them. Let's see. Trying how to consistently feel from data engineer. So many tools to learn. I'm trying to go through this. Data scientist. Do you offer coaching for starting your own consulting biz? Recommend someone. It really depends on what you mean there. One, I put out again all these resources, partially to like give people a free option where it's like, hey, do you need my coaching, or do you just want free information here? One of the things in here, this is on the paid section. I've got, this is kind of like a mini course in here somewhere. I should probably, so there's like a mini course in here. Actually, I should probably just pin it to the top. But there's everything from how to set fees. There's 3 videos that I need to find. How to set fees. Did I not post all the videos yet? Oh, the market campaign. So there's this one. So yeah, so okay, it's just underneath. So the marketing campaign, and then okay, so it's right here. I'm just staring at it. So yeah, these 3 videos are kind of like an hour and a half mini course on selling, marketing, and pricing, which should get you kind of started. So that there's that. If you have specific things, and if you have a specific project size, feel free to reach out, and I can kind of talk further there. Like it just depends on the commitment and what you're looking for. So let's see. Quick question. How do you sell a project as a company? How do you sell a project as a company if you've never done that before this way, only as a consultant? I'm not sure. So, how to sell a project as a company if you've never did that before this way, only. I'm not sure what you're asking. So maybe if you can rephrase that. Sorry, I'm just not 100% sure there. Do you have any clients outside the US? Did you know consultants outside of the US who has clients in the US? I've had clients outside the US. Usually the trickiest thing is trying to figure out payment, make sure that payment's handled. Most should have some method, but that's the one thing is payment. Also sometimes language barrier. I did have a client in Japan, and so it was interesting because we had basically a translator that would work in between us. So all meetings took twice as long, but it was good. It was really fun. And I imagine there's got to be a few people who have clients in the US because we have a lot of people in this community. There's like 700 people. And there's a lot of people from Europe. There's a lot of people from different places, especially Europe. Europe seems to have a lot of contractors. I think because contractors and consultants, especially because I think of how hiring and firing works in Europe, where it's a lot harder to fire. So I think they often push to have more like contractors and consultants. But there's a ton of them in here, and you can probably even ask that question. I think it was a question at some point in here. I kind of answered this question earlier. How did you get your first few clients? Um, Basically, yeah, I answered it earlier, so I'm not that I don't want to repeat it, but I want to see if there's any other questions first. What does your sales process look like from high level? As a follow up, after receiving a response from a lead, what do you present to leads in your initial sales call? Good call. So usually, again, like you imagine, the first step is a lead comes in. They'll set up a meeting with me. I have like a Calendly, and for me, I'm very like I don't do cold DMs, so they just find my content and eventually find me and set up a meeting with me. Once that, we'll have like a first initial call, usually like a 30-minute call where we just say, hey, we introduce each other, we become familiar. I I like to tell people like if you can again, it's so hard to say this without being like, oh, you're trying to manipulate someone. It's like just if you can, if someone says something that like they're like, hey, uh, I went to so and so school, and you went to that school, be like, oh, that's awesome. I went there too, and then try to connect on that. Again, like part of the goal as you're trying to sell to people and work with people is you're trying to get trust, and you want that not just because you want them to pay you, but because as you are working with them, you want them to follow your advice. You want them to do what you think is the right thing, and so it's all about building trust throughout the process. But yeah, so first few minutes of the call, you're building rapport. You're just trying to understand who they are, what their problems are, and then you can start diving really deeply into their situation, right? You can ask them, yeah, like what does your day to day look like? What's the main project that you've called me? Why is this the main project? Are there other projects that you would, you're kind of trying to choose between? Like really just focus on asking questions and learning about the person. And then towards the last maybe 10 minutes, in the 30-minute call, you can kind of figure out where you'd like to go. And what I mean by that is like there's some sort of yes that you need from this client or prospect at this time, right? Either yes, you need to go to another sales call, right? Because this is a bigger client, you might need another sales call with someone that's uh, maybe a little higher up that can make a budget decision. If it's a smaller company, you probably don't need that, right? Like if it's a smaller organization, you honestly could probably offer them a proposal. Like I usually say like, okay, hey, here's some thoughts that I'm thinking. Do these match kind of like, are these solutions kind of what you're thinking and would they solve your problem? And if they are, you can either mention the price on the call, what you think it'll be, or you can just send an email afterwards. I like to do like 3 proposals, basically where it's like, here's what I can offer that's maybe like very heavily involved with me. Here's what I can offer where maybe I can give half of what you're asking for, and here's what I can offer, maybe just giving advice, right? Like I can do a quick 1 month project with you, and it'd be 10K. Um, yeah, and that's kind of that ends the smaller side of the business. On the larger side, you kind of go through a little more process. On the second call, hopefully have a person that can decide budget, and you can talk a little bit more in understanding kind of what the driver of the project is, what's the value, understand it fully before kind of committing more. I mean that's kind of what I'd say, and then you can do the 3 proposals as well. I think I like that because then it gives people options. It lets them know, hey, I'm not like I can be crazy expensive, but I can also be like affordable if you just want to test me out, and that's generally increased my yes rate, my conversion rate there. Let's see. Oh, someone just said I'm a non-US consultant with US clients. Yeah, it's totally possible. Like there's plenty of people that do it. It has its challenges, but that I should put like a post here. That should be like one of the posts here in the future. Um, I should let's see. I don't know. I'm gonna title this too. Oh, non-US US client. I'm just gonna say that. I'm just gonna keep that for later. I'll post that then. That way we can see what people thought. Because we have people from Australia, we have people from everywhere. So I'm curious to see what people ask. Yep, I'm glad this was helpful. Oh, cool. We use mostly stuff like Upwork to handle billing because it works and can sidestep any paperwork. Yeah, like I kind of poke at Upwork and like, oh man, Upwork isn't great. It it is and isn't, right? Like if you're good at Upwork, like that's the thing. It's like you just have to get good at Upwork. If you're good at it, dude, I see people making like hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on Upwork. It's just hard. It's hard to get there, but it's going to be hard wherever you go, right? Like you're gonna have to choose your hard, as people like to say. Your hard could be trying to compete with, 1,000 other data consultants on Upwork. Your hard could be trying to figure out how to win the SEO marketing game. It's all hard. None of it is easy. And in the end, you probably can end up in the same space, making about the same amount. But hard is hard. Yeah, I don't have anything here, but it looks like someone referenced like, do you use anything to create contracts? Oh no, sorry. Yeah. Do you have an app to create your contracts and allow electronic signatures? Yes, I use DocuSign. But someone underneath said, yeah, PandaDoc. But I use DocuSign. Big tip: avoid nearshoring companies. They are not your friend. Yeah, I would be surprised. Ben, true or false? Being a full-time employee is easier, but being a consultant is more rewarding, more fun, and financially rewarding. Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. Like being an employee is easy, like you said. Like it's depending where you work, but like you can chill a little more. You don't have to be on top of things as much. Obviously, if you get like some high level, like become a director, that's a little different. But like if you're just a data engineer at most companies I've worked at, like they expect you obviously to do your job well, but if you do the wrong work, right, no one's gonna like, but your manager told you to do that work, that's gonna maybe not be the end of the world. You might just not get promoted. Whereas if you do the wrong work as a consultant, or if you don't like actually provide advice that's helpful, right, like that can hurt you. But again, it's way more rewarding. It feels really good to kind of like own your work, own what you do. Yeah, it's just like it's really cool. And I think, for me, especially since I also have like the brand, there is value in that. Like I referenced earlier, one of the hard parts about consulting is that there's not a lot of value um, in like your company unless you have like a giant book and like have tons of really good relationships. But even then, if the relationships were connected to a single person, right, then you leave, the value kind of dissipates a bit. But you can build up things like IP. Maybe you have a training that's really unique, and then people are willing to pay for. Or maybe you have a really unique, like Kimball has like obviously data marts, or have a really unique like set of IP or thoughts or processes that you can then license out. So there are ways you can make like these value even as a consultant that you can eventually sell. Oh, interesting. Okay, so this is cool. I didn't know this. So the Upwork, we're talking about Upwork again. So the billing feature can be used outside of Upwork jobs, and it's a lifesaver if you're located in a country with complicated financial reporting laws. Okay, that's cool. So I guess Upwork lets you somehow report or use them maybe for billing, even if it's not Upwork work. I assume they charge a fee because that's Upwork's method of operating. But especially like Zesky's saying here, sometimes, yeah, dealing with other companies it gets or other countries it gets really complicated. So yeah. Kind of answered this question earlier, Nikhil. Honestly, again, I would go. So TFA kind of talked about it, but this resources section that's here, it's free. You know, it doesn't cost you anything. Go. It's got I think a few hours on like marketing, sales. I might even have networking in there. So networking. But yeah, it's got a lot. Let's see. What's a realistic annual salary to make part-time, 20 hours for a data analyst, expert, SQL? Okay, so this is maybe not specifically consulting, but more general. Part-time. I mean, I'm trying to think. So that's $1,000 or $1,000, 1,000 hours, right? Part-time is about 1,000 hours in a year. If you're charging 150 to $200 an hour, right? I mean, yeah, you'll make. Sorry, my cat just ran. Yeah, you'll make, you can make 150 to 200K. It's not impossible. It's hard, but it's not impossible. If you're looking for consulting, those rates are hard numbers to get. So maybe it's more realistic to think like 100. If you're just partially doing it and maybe not fully consulting. But my goal is generally to get people away from like 100 and push them towards like the 250 range eventually. So this is going back to the Upwork thing. The fee sucks, but it's that or hiring a lawyer. Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. So yeah, sometimes like those fees that you pay on whatever billing feature, you're like, well, this is still like it sucks. It sucks seeing at the end of the year that you spent like whatever it is, $5,000, whatever it is. But you're like, but it was so convenient that it is kind of worth it. It depends. Again, I will always push for ACH, especially my big contracts. Every time it's a big contract, I'm just like, oh, 2% of like $100,000 is $2,000. That is just for dealing with this payment. So it's a pretty hefty tax to pay. So yeah, as much as you can get rid of those fees, great. But it's like there's always good trade-offs here. Let's see. I'm gonna put so to all non-U.S. consultants. Or how would you say this? Maybe just non-U.S. consultants. How do you land U.S. clients? Running. So yeah, I'm just gonna post this. Working UK clients as non-U.S. consultant. How do y'all do it? Do you land and bill? How do you land clients? The U.S. Do you handle billing? Are there any gotchas? Yeah. So yeah, so that's kind of why I like this group, right? Like it's great for just posting and sharing thoughts like this because I know everyone has these questions, and I'm really just trying to create a space to help people out. Cool. I don't know. Does anyone have any other questions? Seems like we've kind of come to an end here. I also do some of these live specifically for the TFA group. In fact, recently we did one where I did what would you call it? Like an Ask Me Anything. Where is this one? And I literally, it was like we just had like 20 people on a call. Oh yeah, here. We just had 20 people on a call, and basically they just were asking questions and it was sharing. It was really good. Again, it's always really nice just to hear everyone's thoughts, not just mine, which is awesome. Which project management platform do you use to manage your client's projects? For example, Asana, ClickUp, or another tool? Or do you prefer not to use a platform due to learning curve? I mean, generally, I'll just use something like Jira or something. Not Jira. What is the Jira? No, I think it's Jira, right? Yeah, not Confluence. Yeah, Jira. I'll just use Jira if I need it. What has been your favorite project to work on so far? Can you describe the technical aspects of it? I'm trying to think through. Let's see. Recently, I mean, it was less of a technical project. It was more like this is one of those projects that I really like because it's like the outcome's kind of nice, or it's like it was a sad situation really. So basically what happened was another consultant came in and built this solution for a client. And they did what you probably shouldn't do, or at least what I view you shouldn't do as a consultant, is they built it all on their cloud. So they didn't build it on the client's cloud, they built it on their cloud. And then after they had built it, they decided to tell the client, hey, you're now going to pay for this solution every month. Which I don't know like how the contract was set up that this allowed it. But yeah, they're like, okay, now you're going to pay monthly for us to manage this solution. And so they were paying like $30,000 a month for this solution. And I was just like, what? Like, that's crazy to me. Like, I want to do that. And I don't actually want to do that, but it's just like, I want that deal. It sounds amazing. You pay me to build it and then I charge you for it. That's amazing. So yeah, I think that was like, I basically came in and helped them build a POC to say, hey, you could do the same thing yourself. There's nothing special because that was their argument. The argument was that they've added in IP, they've added in all these extra layers, and I basically within like a very like again like a 20K project, just like a 20K proof of concept, was like, hey, you can do this yourself. Here's how you can do it. I built out already, X pathways. They had to, the hard thing would have been like the migration because it was like 1,000 basically data connections that they had to deal with from like external partners. But beyond that, like I was like, hey, this method would be cheaper, and you can do it. Like I've been able to do it for this 10. You can do it for the next 990. It will suck. It'll take a year. But you can definitely migrate. Again, it was just a really terrible situation. It's just a good. I just like that I was able to set them in the right direction. There's something about like being able to say, hey, you can totally not do what you're doing. I don't know why this happened, but it's one of those interesting projects. Technically, it wasn't super complicated. I think the complicated aspect of that project was just the fact that it was so many like data connections and like having to work all that out and move it all. Honestly, I find that a lot of data projects, especially like SMB size, like maybe for large enterprises this is different. SMBs are pretty straightforward, right? Like they need pretty straightforward things. But the challenge is usually fitting in their budget or just making sure that things look right. Larger companies, then you have like big data problems, and we want streaming. How are we gonna do streaming? How can we do it cost effectively? Things like that. So, but most small companies, honestly, they're creating some of their own problems. We want to do real time streaming, and it's like you want a dashboard that's showing up once a week. You don't need that. So it's really just helping people not hurt themselves. Cool. Well, I think we're kind of out of questions. Hopefully this was helpful for anyone who's thinking about consulting. Hopefully this was just a good little experience. Oh, here, another one. What's the split? What is your split of working SMBs versus enterprise? I'd say, what is it probably? I'd say like probably 60 or 40% of my work, or 60, 40. 60% of my work is probably SMBs, and then 40% is probably somewhere in that enterprise, larger companies. How many days a week do you work on projects, and how many do you spend looking at new clients? So usually the way I do it is I try to do most of my marketing in the morning. Oh, I actually have. Let me see if I can find this. I have written an article somewhere. Here. This was kind of my breakdown. So I try to kind of keep my work something like this. So maybe some content marketing or things like this within the first few hours of my day. Then I'll try to push most of my meetings earlier. And then afterwards, I try to focus somewhere in this like 12:30 to 6 p.m. space. So that's generally kind of my breakdown. I'm almost 100% enterprise. I've done only one SMB. Well, Jeff, is that through? Because I know one thing is that through. Where do the clients come from for you? I guess is what I'm trying to think. It's like, where is it? Because one of the challenges with enterprise, I'll tell most people, is you have to usually have some in. SMBs, the reason it's easy is content, right? Like SMBs are very easy to get through content marketing. They have like less restrictions. Whereas I will say enterprises kind of expect more of a traditional route of where their consultants come from. So you have to be bigger. You have to like come through like certain route, like pathways. But if I'd love to know kind of, yeah, here. Oh, hey, well, yeah. So some reaching out to you, if not subcontracting. Oh, I think probably what's helped with Jeff's background is you've worked for CPGs, and I think that's helped because then your network has kind of become CPGs. Yes, that's what I was going to say. Yeah. So it does. That's why it's not bad, guys, to like work a few years in the industry. Honestly, I know a lot of people that have like they'll work a few years and they'll work for Fortune 500s, and then you just come back and consult, right? Like if you worked well and if you were a really good employee, like people want to pay you. Like they'll still want you to come back and work for them. I know someone who worked for General Mills who did this. I know someone that worked for like Looker. So they work for Looker, and because they were like very client facing, they were like a solutions architect or solutions engineer, and they were really good and people liked them. They worked with tons of like these Fortune 500 companies, and that just made it easier. So yes, I do think you can work with enterprises. You generally need to have more connections or like a network that just makes it easy. Because once you have that, like if you have someone that's in there that likes you, yeah, it's I say easy. It's just easier. I'm sure it's still hard. So I did talk about this earlier. Again, you can check out the link for the TFA. There's a whole. Let me go back to that. There's a whole section specifically on basically this. So consulting resources. Again, this is a free section. This doesn't cost anything. Just so it's clear, where it says free. So it says free space up. How do you see? Okay, it says free space up here. This is free. This is paid. Totally free up here. Consulting resources. How to market yourself. How to sell. How to price. There's tons of videos on this in term and also just written stuff as well. I wrote cold DMs, why I think cold DMs don't work, and just share some thoughts there on how to actually write like valuable cold DMs. So tons of stuff there that kind of answer this question. Awesome. Yeah. So someone just sharing where their clients come from. I mostly work with startups, and it's mostly from friend of a friend of a friend type networking. Yeah. Honestly, networking super underrated. Like content works, but only sort of. Um, I sometimes you never know. You just like reach out to someone. Oh, can you send the link? Sure, sure, sure. Some like I just happened to reach out to someone the other day, and they were like, "Oh, actually, we need your help." So like you'd be surprised. Like most people are really bad, and I'm one of them. Are really bad at keeping their networks alive. All you need to do, and I need to like set up some sort of reminder. Send some sort of personal message. Like I hate the idea of like automating this. So that's why I'm like send some like personal message to people you'd like to work with again every so often. Just be like, hey, how's it going? Do you want to catch up? How's that thing that you were getting married? You were doing something like actually care about people. I think that's what's important is like you do need to care about people. You don't just want to do this because you never know when a random reach out or post or something that someone sees becomes a client. In fact, I think I want to say I've had so many people tell me that they're like, "Oh yeah, like I happened to post on LinkedIn for the first time ever about like something that they were trying to craft it to help them get clients consulting." Um, just put their kids' birthdays in your calendar. Yeah, just put their kids' birthdays in your calendars. I mean, maybe not. Don't be creepy about it, but I'm sure you can just care about people. And you never know. Again, I was going to say, yeah, I've heard a few examples where people were like, I posted something on LinkedIn. It happened to be on whatever, how to use Power BI, how to do whatever. And someone that I hadn't worked with for a year was like, oh, that's really helpful. And then they're like, oh, that person exists again. Let me reach out to them. I had this conversation again. I reached out to an old client that I hadn't worked with for 2 years, just happened to reach out to them. And that was their thing. They're like, oh, it just so happens we're like looking to deal with this project. Like, would you be interested in talking more? You just don't know. And the thing is, like, people just only remember the most recent people they've interacted with. So they'll forget you. You have to stay top of mind. You want to be the first person that comes to mind when they're like, we need this problem solved. You want to be the person that they reach out to. And the thing is, you don't even have to be the person that solves the problem, right? Like if you, let's say someone reaches out to you and you can't solve that problem. Again, this is one reason I created the TFA. I keep bringing it up, but this is why I created it. You might know someone in this group that's like, hey, like I do that thing. And then you can introduce that person and then you still solve the problem, right? Like you might not think you've solved the problem, but you have, because you become the person that whenever someone they need to find a consultant in a certain space, they're like, hey, if we talk to Joe or Jane, they always have someone that we can connect with on any problem. That way, when they are also thinking of you when whatever problem you solve comes up. So it's just constantly staying top of mind. Is there a long-term prospect of consulting firm compared to in the age of Gen AI? Is it worth that your consulting firm can compete with tech giants since consulting works with various projects? I think so. Like the more uncertainty there is in a time period, the more consultants are valuable, right? Because people have no idea what's going on, and so they need someone to come in and tell them, "Hey, here's how the world should go. Here's what we've seen. Here's our experience." So I think like the more fear people feel about an area, the more value you can provide by providing some certainty and some stability. And I think a lot of the big consulting companies, maybe not big tech, but like big consulting companies, are hurting right now because of their pricing models. So right now, I think it's a good time, if you've got a more fair pricing model, for you to kind of come in, offer these, a better deal, especially if you can deliver. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about Gen AI. It takes so long to deploy and to shift how big companies operate. Like they're not going to shift overnight into suddenly using Gen AI for everything, as much as they like to say it. For like I think Klarna just said that, like, we're getting rid of Salesforce and all of this stuff. But someone also pointed out recently that partially that could be because they're about to go IPO and they're trying to show that they're reducing costs. Yeah, the link is, I think it's somewhere in the chat. I can put it up one more time, or it's actually, you know what? It's below. It's below in the description. So yeah, that way I don't put it up for the third time in this chat, but it is in this chat. It's like 3 bubbles above. Yeah, it's right above the Technical Freelancer Academy. Cool. Well, it's 9:06. Minus the, I keep thinking about the math blunder, about the 200 by 200. And for some reason, my brain thought 4,000 instead of much larger number, 40,000. But no, hopefully this was helpful, everyone. Hopefully everyone found or got the answers they're looking for. Again, if there's anything else, feel free to ping me or honestly post it on the TFA. I try to answer questions. And if I don't answer a question, I love it. Shane, who has his own company but has been so helpful in this space. Let me see if I can find. Oh, this one's the U.S. business owners. What businesses did you choose from? Where's Shane? Where would he have been here? Oh, I think partnering with vendors. Shane always has really well thought out answers. He always has like very long responses here. Oh, this one was actually him. He doesn't often sell the fact that he has a service, but occasionally. Most of the time, he's just very, very helpful. I'm trying to think which one would he say. What do you write about? How to price? How do I increase rates? Oh, I think this one might be interesting. How do I increase rates? And let's see if, yeah, Shane gave an answer here. So he always gives really thought out answers that I think are very helpful. So again, there's tons of people in here that will answer questions if you have them about consulting. Specifically, please keep them on consulting every once in a while. We have some more technical questions. We do have a tech space, but generally my view on that is it should be more about like trying to understand certain vendors and maybe where they're going, and less about like, how do I implement a certain technical thing. But yeah, this is an awesome like little group. So cool. Awesome. And multitasking is hard. No one expects to be able to. No, I need to be able to do everything. I think the problem is I've been watching too many other like actual streamers like Atriarch and the Primogen, and I'm just like, they're so witty and so fast. How do I get that speed and that I got to do this more often probably. Anyways, hopefully this was great, everyone. Thanks so much. I've been rambling for the last few minutes, but I appreciate all your time. Let me know if you have any questions. Again, post them in the TFA. Other than that, thanks all. See y'all. Goodbye.